again.
Hooray. And everything's good. It's Wednesday, June 15th, 2022. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we are going to talk about cartoons from around 1995 to 2003. All right. So for a long time, before COVID, my life was very different, as many people could say. But, I used to go to an office every single day, and I used and City Bike, the bike share in New York, was not nearly as widely deployed in the past as it is now. There weren't as many docks. It didn't cover as much of the city. There weren't that many bikes. So I used my bike for a lot of things. As a result, I never put a rack on the back of it or any of this other stuff because I use this bike so often, and most of the use of it was day-to-day short-distance biking, and only occasionally, every other weekend or so, would I do a long ride. So I didn't want to overburden the bike with a bunch of extra weight. Now, fast forward to 2022, I use the bike share for pretty much all short bike rides, because if you don't, your bike will get fucking stolen because it's, New York in 2022.
It depends, but mostly.
I mean, I have had 2 bikes stolen. 2/3 of all the bikes I have owned as an adult have been stolen since I moved to New York City.
Yeah, I've managed to avoid that by not leaving bikes lying around.
Yep.
Ever.
But now I'm at a point where my main bike, I really only use it for rides that are more than 40 or 50 miles. I don't even get that bike out of the basement unless we're going a long distance. So I just put a rack on it, because if I'm biking that far, I don't want to carry a backpack. So I got a bike rack on the back. I got a nice one, and I got some panniers. And I got to say, this is a trend. I've said this a lot about things that I buy. This has been a theme on Geek Nights of either buy the best of something or the barely minimum viable piece of crap of something. Very rarely do you want something in between those two. I got the best panniers.
All right.
I went, and I've learned something kind of specific. If you want bike bags or car accessories, like a bike rack for a car, basically hardware for things like sports, it's not like there's just one company that makes the good ones. There is one country that makes the good ones. Then that country is Germany. France is a close second. Amsterdam and the Netherlands, there's good stuff there too. But Germans Thule and Ortlieb, holy shit, is the stuff they make just better in every conceivable way.
There's not necessarily a lot of competition in those areas, right? It's
and these are highly specialized. Most people don't need bike panniers, and if they do, they don't need they don't need the best panniers. But these Ortlieb panniers that I got, they're so light, it's hard to believe they're as sturdy as they are for how little they weigh. I'm really excited about these things.
I mean, it is sort of annoying, right? That when if you look at, say, a hobby like computers,
yep,
right? You go on Newegg or wherever, and it's there's, obviously Newegg, there's plenty of vendors to choose from, but it's there's just so many of everything that you could possibly need, right? There's so much competition, so many different video card companies.
Yep.
It's any weird possible thing you can get easily, right? But cycling is a huge thing worldwide, right? Yet, if you want to get stuff, and it's not just, some things you can just get, right, pretty easily.
Yeah.
But for, other things, it's wow, why can't, it's there's a lot of companies making bike shoes, but it's there's not, where can you go that actually has a full selection of many brands and many sizes?
There used to be a place I used to get good bike shoes on Zappos, but they pretty much went to crap. So even the fancy bike shops in New York City, like REI or Paragon, I tried to go to get new bike shoes, to get Emily some bike shoes. They have 3 options. That's it.
Yeah, they have a handful. So they have some, but the selection they have is just a few, right? They don't have a large, and it's not just a supply chain thing. Some cases it is, but it's No, it's always sort of been like this.
Well, it's also what I found is that, especially with a lot of bike stuff, most bikers don't care that much because whatever they get for whatever thing, like I want a basket or I want a bag, it doesn't really matter. They get some top heat garbage and it's good enough. But if you have a specialized use case or you care a lot about some specific aspect, like I wanted panniers that are 100% waterproof because I'm going to be biking like to Rochester from Queens with these things. Like I got to put my clothes and like stuff in them like it's a suitcase. If it rains on like Tuesday on that bike trip, I can't just not keep biking. So already actually waterproof is a big step beyond kind of waterproof. And that applies to most things, not just bike bags. So, or like I want to really easily be able to put them on the bike and take them off the bike. Not everyone would care about that, but I care about that a lot. I got to tell you, a lot of these bike bags look great, are great, not easy to actually remove from your bike. The ones that are easy to remove, but also don't just fall off, a lot more expensive. Ortlieb has like
the Timbuktu one I have, it's
I looked at that one.
Relatively easy to remove, but it's still somewhat of a pain, right? It's like you hook these two clips and then you got to go down low with a little Velcro strappy thing.
But meanwhile, I go to Ortlieb, this highly specialized like German company that makes bike panniers.
Well, I mean, pretty much anyone you see who has panniers, those are the ones they almost always have.
Yep.
I rarely see another brand out there.
Oh, even funnier. Well, I see people with these shitto top peak ones, but they look like crap. So the other day I was biking with Emily in Proximate Park, and out of nowhere, I see the pannier I want to buy on someone's bike. And I point at it. I'm like, oh, that's the one I'm thinking about getting. And the guy like notices, and he bikes up to us. He's like, I see you checking out my Ortliebs. I've had these things for 11 years. They're the best.
Yeah, that's a company that makes a really strong bag.
Yeah. So that's my exciting story. That's all I got.
You bought a bag.
I bought a bag. That's exciting times for him and Scott in the year. So there is some news. Regardless of any other factors around Made in Abyss, like the mangaka being weird, the manga being something I don't recommend you read, but the anime, I am invested enough to where I want to know what the deal is. And
I think it's like I watched it back when we did an episode, so you can search Geek Nights and figure out when that.
We had some theories,
and I watched it, and I liked it enough that I watched that whole first season, and I have positive memories of what I watched, and I actually remember quite a bit of the content. Right, it's like they were in a city on top of a hole, and like an orphanage, and then
the hole is the last unexplored part of the planet, and there's shit down there.
There are people who go down the hole, but most people don't because that's a bad idea. And there's some elevator to the bottom of the hole where evil experiments happen.
It's a lot like deep sea diving. It's easy to go down, but it's difficult to come back up.
Yep. The kids had some reason to go down the hole. I forget what that was, but they're going to go down there.
Yep.
And then they stop at like a house where some evil shit happens. Then they stop at
also the broader meta story of whatever's down there, like there are ancient skeletons of humans buried everywhere, praying in a weird position, and they're all facing this hole. And that's like the meta story of what's up with that hole.
And then they stop at a forest cave, and the forest cave is nicer. Some good stuff happens there, but that's where the season ended. And I was like, what? I thought I was going to get a complete story in that first season, and I wasn't.
Yep.
And then, like Rim said, I heard from other people that the manga is really effed up with, like, children stuff. It's not good.
It's not good stuff. Do not read that manga.
You can read on Wikipedia. I mean, I don't know from firsthand experience, but I just been warned, and I confirmed with like Wikipedia and whatnot.
Everyone who has interacted with both has said to the effect, the anime cut a lot of that shit out and toned everything down and made this palatable.
Yeah, but you can tell that the manga creator clearly has some fetishes, which like to each their own.
Yeah.
But the certain lines that are not safe for most people.
Yep.
Right? It's like, I can watch like Ichi the Killer, but I'm not gonna read the into the whatever Abyss manga, right?
So my news is the second season of the anime, which is coming and is going to premiere on July 6th, like in Japan, real soon. There's a third promo video that's basically a trailer for the season. And I watched
Is it
this.
going to be the end of the thing, though? Because it's like...
So this trailer shows what looks like ancient times, some humans looking for a lost city, finding the city. The city clearly looks like a crashed spaceship at the bottom of a hole, and it keeps showing these humans praying in a very particular way.
Is it a prequel to The Prince of Nothing? Is that what it is?
You know what? I originally posited that this show, what it's about, is very similar to what The Prince of Nothing is about. And having seen this trailer, I'm gonna triple down on that assumption. Just like Orbital Children is the prequel to the Culture books.
Anyway, but yeah, I don't know if I'm actually gonna go. Even though I really enjoyed the first TV series when I watched it, that I have enough memories of it. It's like it's been so long that it's like...
I thought that too, but I watched the trailer and suddenly all the questions I had in my brain came back to the surface. Like, what was the deal with that?
Watch the first season, which I don't really want to do either. You know, I don't know.
We'll see. But I'll watch this when it comes out. If you don't watch it, I'll watch it, and I'll be able to tell you pretty quickly, much like with Attack on Titan, is what's in the basement worth it, or is it some bullshit? Because Attack on Titan, it is definitely not worth it.
Anyway.
In some other news that's very similar, we already talked about this, not going to press it, but Inu-Oh, we now have the GKids English language theatrical trailer. It just dropped today for this film. It's going to screen in the U.S. on August 12th. So 2 months from now, we can see Inu-Oh in theaters or by whatever means. I feel like I'll be able to put on a mask and go see this at like the Museum of the Moving Image or whatever.
Well, I don't know if they usually don't show it there on the first run. We'll have to see what happens.
Yep.
You know.
I didn't see where it's going to open in the U.S., where we can see it in New York.
Sure GKids usually has a website where you can buy tickets and find theaters near you.
Gonna go see this. Having watched this trailer now in English, I'm extremely excited about Inu-Oh. Hot damn.
I do, just on the more general, still hottest topic in the land of the U.S. anime industry, the Funimation Crunchyroll merger.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I never want to, I think we emphasize it all the time, but, anime movies are where it's at, obviously, right? There aren't that many of them each year that aren't just Pokemon movie 100 or One Piece movie 1,000 or whatever, right?
Digimon 50.
And in terms of the United States, they're pretty much all brought over by GKids. GKids is the distributor, publisher, whatever they technically are, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones who bring over the anime movies.
On one hand, I don't want a monopoly on these things, but on the other hand, they are fucking knocking it out of the park.
But the point is, GKids is not Funimation. It's not Crunchyroll, right? It is pretty much... they obviously bring in other animated works from other parts of the world as well, which I think are not, don't get enough play because, pretty much if GKids has their hands on it, it's probably worth your time. But, just, people just, I think they compartmentalize the movie and TV parts of the anime world. And it's like, actually, you're talking about this company, Funimation, Crunchyroll, whatever, controlling all the anime market. But actually, GKids is right over here, guys. Here it is.
Sadly, I canceled my Crunchyroll because I'm watching a lot of non-anime cartoons lately.
Yep. I mean, I canceled every single streaming service. I have except for Amazon Prime Video, which I just have because, right?
Yep. Well, there is still a bunch of stuff I'm actively watching on Netflix. Some anime, bunch of Star Trek. Though all the Star Trek's leaving Netflix for that Paramount thing, which, not super jazzed about that.
There are, every streaming service might have one or two things that I might watch.
I only keep the streaming service if we are actively watching something, and when we finish it.
I got HBO Max. I watched a nice handful of pile of stuff on there, right?
And then I canceled it.
Then it's like, all right, that's it. Cancel.
I'm going to resubscribe when Our Flag Means Death 2 comes out.
There is no single streaming service out there that has enough things for me to want to pay for a whole month and watch it all. So I'm just waiting until that happens.
I sadly
And
think for us,
part of it is just that I watch a lot less things. It seems like everyone I know watches just lots and lots of video content, and I don't.
well, though I still got to say, one of the best animated anythings I have seen in decades is Arcane, which is only on Netflix. Holy shit, was that good. But you could wait because there is a season 2. So you could just wait until there's a season 2, get Netflix for a month, watch it, and then we'll do a big show on it.
I mean, it's also, I think a lot of people other than me, like, really want to watch things like as soon as they come out for some reason. It's like, it's not wine. Well, I guess wine gets better with age. It's not.
Depends on the wine.
I'm just saying, yeah, but I'm just saying it's not milk, right? Right?
Cheese. Milk also gets better with age.
Not if it's just sitting in your fridge aging.
I mean, wine just sitting in a bottle, like not stored properly, does not get better with age.
The point is that movies, television, they don't change with time.
Scott,
change.
You know what we're watching on Netflix right now that's not like the cartoons I just described? Star Trek Deep Space Nine from like the 90s. Like, that's what we're watching.
Well, things also don't get better with age. So just because it's old doesn't mean be watching it.
But I'm saying there was no rush to watch it. This is just we wanted to watch that. That's why we're still paying for Netflix right now.
Yeah, I guess if I like Star Trek things, I would, this. I guess that's another thing, right? Is like, if you look at there are certain properties, right? Star Trek being like maybe one of the top ones, that there is a pre-existing plethora of content, right? It's like Star Trek had multiple even as someone who doesn't like Star Trek, I know it had multiple TV series that were very long, some of them, several of them.
I'll bet you, who does not watch Star Trek, could name more than one captain of a starship.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, and there's many movies, right? Many. I've seen more than one, I guess. And it's like, and they're making more, right? At some steady-ish rate.
In fact, it's exploded. Right? Since Lower Decks came out, there has been my cup overfloweth on Star Trek right now.
Right. So it's like, if you just have a thing like that you like, it's like, then suddenly it's like, it's worth it for you to subscribe to a streaming service because you can just watch and watch and watch and watch and watch, right? But there is not everything that I like tends to either be a single movie or maybe a trilogy of movies or maybe, even we talked about James Bond. It's like there's only so many James Bond movies. You can watch them all.
If there was a James Bond specific streaming service, I would subscribe to it for a month and then I would cancel it.
Right, exactly. It's like there's nothing that I like that I'm into that has just piles and piles and piles and piles of stuff. It's like, and things, for example, like Galaxy Express 39, an anime series with hundreds of episodes, right? Fist of the North Star, an anime series with hundreds of episodes. I've seen them all.
Yeah.
I've seen every episode of those things. I'm done, right? It's like, what are you gonna do now? Right? It's like, and I'm not gonna watch one. I'm not doing One Piece in it. So.
But I think you should watch Arcane more because it is one of the best animated series of any kind to come out anywhere in the world in the last
my life
decade.
is only going to be so long, so we'll see what happens.
You got any news?
Part of my life to it or not?
You got any news? Because you did.
News. There's not too much news going on. It's summertime.
Well, you've got a geek bite because you did think that this was worth spending some of your limited life to consume.
I did, yeah. So since I'm not working right now, and I won't be working until mid-July, and I'm working on the GeekNights website pretty much for my full-time job right now. And I made some significant progress today also, but. I'm taking some time to read some of these books I already have on my shelf that have been sitting there unread. So I read a manga by Osamu Tezuka, right, which means it's going to be good, called Wonder 3. I guess the original title might have just been W3. And boy, I thought it was going to be about like 3 superheroes or some shit. Like, I didn't actually know the plot. It's like, and once I found out the plot, it was a surprise in that it wasn't what I expected, but it wasn't a surprise in that it was an extremely Osamu Tezuka plot. It's like this is the plot of a Tezuka manga. It sure is. So the plot of W3 is that there are some aliens at like the Milky Way Galactic Council, right? But of course, Earth is primitive and barbaric, and they don't know about that, and they're not members, right? It's like Earth doesn't even know there's aliens yet. And these aliens of the Galactic Council, they look at Earth, and they're like, wow, how primitive and barbaric. Should we just exterminate this planet with an anti-proton bomb because it's so awful? Let's vote. Because we're democratic and everything is good here, right? And they vote, and it's a tie vote. Spoilers. This is the first page, basically. Right? So they're like, okay, I'll tell you what. We'll send 3 of our best aliens, right? Agents, the W3, to go to Earth and with an anti-proton bomb. And they'll decide after a year whether to set the bomb off and leave or to just come back, right?
What's funny is that is superficially very similar to the plot of Wind of Amnesia.
Well, the book itself in the foreword claims similarity to Lilo and Stitch, the way that, Kimba the White Lion is similar to the Lion King. So I'll leave that up to your judgment.
Once I read it, I could make that judgment, because scrolling down a little bit, I can see why that might be the case.
Yeah, so the aliens, right, they disguise themselves as animals. They befriend a kid. There's, humans fighting, right, which makes, things look bad to the aliens. But obviously some of the fighting humans are good. Some of the fighting humans aren't, are bad. There's conflict within the village the kid lives in terms of like the evil landlord, while there's also worldwide conflict between like country A and the secret Phoenix agent group or whatever, right? And everything's tied together, and there's a badass proton bomb that's scary, anti-proton bomb that's scary as hell. And yeah, it was if you like a Tezuka manga and you like that kind of, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. It's one big thick book. You just read the whole thing. If you can get a copy of it.
Yeah.
I kickstarted it a long time ago.
I guess I'll borrow your copy.
Yeah, it was thoroughly enjoyable. It's not like it was the best Tezuka manga ever, but it was good.
All right. I think we can skip the last news I had. We went on long enough. Put a little marker
You hunger.
I do also hunger. I hunger desperately. All right.
Should I eat? What am I going to eat for dinner?
But anyway, things of the day. So, I've mentioned this on the show before, but one thing when I travel in the U.S., what's something me and Emily really like to do is when we can, take Amtrak, take the train instead of flying or driving or anything. But in particular, whenever we can, we love to take those Amtrak sleeper cars because they're
in the train episode.
They're way nicer than you'd expect, and they're way cheaper than you'd expect. So, of course, America's train infrastructure is pathetic compared to almost the entirety of the rest of the world. In fact, as an aside, I learned something interesting. A big chunk of Spain, the country of Spain, almost completely uninhabited because Spain has one of the densest rail networks on Earth. And as a result, almost everyone in Spain lives on the rail lines, and basically people just don't live in the places the trains don't go. That's kind of like, that would be a model for the future, but I digress. So this is a video of someone in Japan traveling around, and they use Japan's fantastic train network. But this video is they ride Japan's cheapest sleeper car train. The absolute bottom of the barrel sleeper train in Japan. This is what it's like. And I got to tell you, I would give anything for America to have something even half as good as this.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. This is such a cool thing. This video is great. I encourage you to watch it. We could have this if we just had the will to have this. So what do you got?
All right. So I don't know if people outside of New York are aware. There is a place called the Morgan Library. Why is it called the Morgan Library? Well, it's because there was a person who you probably know, J.P. Morgan, like J.P. Morgan Chase Bank.
Oh, yeah, the evil oligarch.
evil old wealthy dude from the early 1900s. Yeah, that dude, right? And he lived in a fucking mansion in Manhattan. And he lived in a time where there was no TV, where there was maybe some radio, maybe, right? It's like, there was Broadway theater, right? For being someone so wealthy, we are better entertained than J.P. Morgan was. So
we are better entertained than emperors from ancient times.
Indeed. But J.P. Morgan was wealthy in the early 20th century and thus, and late 19th century, right? And therefore, he had a giant mansion in Manhattan and he had so many books. He built his own damn library on his own estate in Manhattan, right? That's how wealthy this dude was. But anyway, it's now a museum in the 20th first century. It's a museum, right? So you can just go there, and it recently renovated. It's got a new garden. There's apparently some Roman antiquities in the garden. It's been a while since I've been there, so maybe the next time I go to the dentist, I will pay it another visit. Now that it's all reopened and redone and whatnot. It's right across the street from my dentist, so But that's not the news. The news is that one time, I think the last time I was at the Morgan Library was because they had an exhibit of J.R.R. Tolkien's artworks, right? It was like a limited time exhibit, like in the upstairs area, right? And, some of those paintings and illustrations were things I had seen in the past in part or in whole, like the map from the front of the book and, things of that nature, right? But many of them were artworks that I had not seen, and they had the originals there, which was, it was really good. I was very happy that I took the time to go to that exhibit when it was there. However, if you are not so fortunate enough to live within such distance, and the exhibit's not there anymore, right?
Nah.
If you are not so fortunate as to live near the Morgan Library during that time period where that could be seen, or if it's, I guess, on display anywhere else at any future time, well, the estate of J.R.R. Tolkien, which is a intellectual property, evil organization, basically, that sues anyone who tries to do anything with any lords or any rings, or any hobbits, or anything, they have completely redone the Tolkien estate website. So if you were to go to the official website of the Tolkien estate, right, which is it just tokenestate.com?
Yep.
Yeah, it's tokenestate.com. If you go there and you click on, it's got many sections, right? But the section that's my thing of the day is the painting section. If you click on that, then you can see there are illustrations, maps, and calligraphy, and pretty much everything I saw at that exhibit, they just have scanned in on this website, and you can just look at it.
This is fantastic.
Without getting up off your ass. So I've seen all these things in person, but at the time I saw them, there was no other way to see them without, I guess, being a member of the estate or whatever, have access to their archives or something. But no, they're now scanned and on this website for free. You just click and look at them. There they are. Right? So enjoy.
So, as a little aside, because you just made a very clear illustration of the fantastic wealth of J.P. Morgan, I just want to point out that J.P. Morgan, if you translate that to modern day US dollars, maybe had a couple billion at most. Meanwhile, fucking Jeff Bezos today has 130 billion.
Yep.
2 orders of magnitude more wealth than the J.P. Morgan that did everything Scott just described. So,
I mean, part of that is, simply because of, just the wealth of society as a whole, right? If you think about, it's like, what was the market cap of humanity at the time? Percentage-wise, J.P. Morgan might have been close. Right. It's
well,
like
but also as much as
total wealth, right? Our society is now billions more people,
but
and using billions more things
simultaneously.
Billions more resources have been mined. The wealth of humanity is greater. So to get a true measurement, you'd have to measure it as a percentage of the total wealth of humanity.
But simultaneously, wealth has been concentrated in the modern era increasingly into ever smaller numbers of hands.
Indeed.
Despite,
I think it's about the same number of hands.
It actually does seem to be fewer.
fewer hands. There were there were billions fewer hands of existing.
Yes. Why do you think I'm a fucking communist at this point?
Anyway. That was JP Morgan good. But
Nope.
He collected a bunch of shit in his library though, and you can just go check it out. You can't read the books though. I guess you have to like arrange it with them, but you can go in the library and look at all the books, which I've done.
I guess the last thing I'd say is part of the reason
you can't touch them. They're
part of the
glass.
reason people like JP Morgan did things like that was back then the income tax in the U.S. was like 90% if you were that rich.
Sure, he made a library because that was how you entertain yourself in the early 20th century, and he could afford to build a whole building and fill it with books. And
you could also dodge taxes
by
doing stuff like that.
And that it wasn't made into a public thing until he was dead.
So in the meta moment, the Geek Nights Book Club book, 9 Fox Gambit. We will do the show on this on Thursday, and then I will announce what I'm going to choose for the next book. I actually should decide. I haven't decided yet. I haven't been free to choose what book I read.
Gives me more time. I had the listener decide, and then I guess I'll have more time to.
Maybe I should break from sci-fi and go in a different direction. I got to look at my pile of unread books that I have purchased for some stupid reason.
Just remember the lesson of Genji, right?
It's not going to be the Count of Monte Cristo. Don't worry.
Right. Well, choose a book that we're actually going to read and finish reading and do an episode on so we can keep the streak alive.
Luckily, we're approaching the I can lay on the beach and read all day times, and real easy to read a book if I go to the beach at all.
Yep.
Otherwise, I know you're still working on the website. Big stuff's coming there. No cons until, at best, there's really good odds that I will be at PAX West doing a panel. Emily will likely also be at PAX West doing a panel, not a different panel for different reasons. We'll see what happens, but even in the best case scenario, I cannot foresee us being at PAX West and doing anything other than a panel or two. Like, I'm not going to be there playing games. I'm going to be wearing a mask in and out like I did at the last 2 PAXs. And don't know what we're going to be doing in the future in terms of public appearances. Stay tuned.
We'll work stuff out, right? But if you're in or around New York City, it's warm out now, right? That's a good time. If like for some reason you really want to see us outside, listening to the podcast isn't enough for you. Come to any of the places that we gather online, right? Our Discord, our forum, Twitter.
Yep.
Email us. What our website our old website that will some hopefully soon be replaced with a new website. And see what's what.
So, I'm going to take you back to a time before you could watch stuff on the internet. And in that time, Scott and I watched a lot of cartoons. There's eras of cartoons that came out, and that time is between the year 1995 and the year 2003. We're going to talk about Cartoon Network's Cartoon.
Yep. So, basically the way things went down, in my life at least, is that, I started off with only the broadcast TV, right, for quite a while. And so the only cartoons I got to see were Saturday morning cartoons on the major networks, right? And before school, there were a few cartoons on sometimes, and then after school, there would be cartoons like syndicated onto a local station, right? Something like that. And that was it. So, and it's like there were a lot of shows I wanted to see that just weren't on, or it's like I'd seen them at some point, but they weren't on now. So tough, right? Then we got cable eventually, and cable had the Nickelodeon, right? But the Nickelodeon in those early times was mostly, it's like all I really wanted to watch was more cartoons, right? It's like I didn't want to watch, like I did watch some, but, I didn't want to watch all those live action things that were on there as much as I just wanted to watch more cartoons. But most of the cartoons they were showing were just, other than the Nicktoons, right? And such, it's like most of it was like reruns and Looney Tunes and all that kind, right? It's like you weren't getting a lot of original new things, right? And so Cartoon Network was a thing I knew existed, but it was not on our cable as an option until, like you said, mid to late 90s. It suddenly was now available, and I was like, oh my God, it's actually a TV network that actually shows nothing but cartoons. Hooray, that's what I want to watch. And I watched it, and it was at the time full of plenty of reruns and old Hanna-Barbera cartoons and things I had seen, right? But they had the cartoons, which is basically they had their own Cartoon Network studio that was somewhat related to, the remnants of Hanna-Barbera. I don't actually understand how that worked. But
I read a bunch about it right before we did the show.
If you care, you can read a bunch about
it.
Yep.
Right? What I was about to say is we're not going to do a history lesson, but the only thing that I think is important is what we'll say is that Fred Seibert was instrumental in all this happening, and the lineage from Hanna-Barbera to Cartoon is important and fascinating and pretty direct. But we're not going to go through that history because at this point, I would mostly read Wikipedia at you, and you can do that yourself. I'm sure there's a podcast out there dedicated just to Fred Seibert or just to Cartoon.
Right.
But also, full disclosure.
However it happened, right? Hanna-Barbera somehow had their logo on there along with the cartoons in the early days.
But I got to give one other full disclosure, and this is more for my part. I watched a bunch of these shows, but 1995, by that point, I was already like 7 years deep into being a mega weeb. I was already watching anime and getting fan subs, and I was one of those, I was a young weeb who started to have a very low opinion of American cartoons and American animation, and I would, the type who very performatively watch anime to the exclusion of everything else. I was very much like that for 7-ish years before Cartoon came out, so while I watched a bunch of these shows, at the time at least, I had a very low opinion of many of them. And some of them I never actually watched more than a handful of episodes of.
No, I mean, but Cartoon Network also was good for it would drag in the weebs, right?
Yeah.
Because they had their Toonami block going on around that same time, right? So it's like, hey, there's the things I wanted to rerun. We're getting rerun on Toonami and eventually Adult Swim, right?
Yeah.
And then, the cartoon was like, it's like you sort of had this full package deal, right? It's like, watch some Voltron, watch some Macross, right? Well, Robotech. Right?
No, Cartoon Network was for American accessible to Americans on TV animation. Cartoon Network in that era was the game. Like, they were the ones. They were doing pretty much the best job I think you could possibly do.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, so the cartoons, the way they started out is there was actually some other show called like the What a Cartoon, which I saw a handful of times. And
well, it had that little Fred Flintstone logo.
Yeah. That was an interesting show because you could, even in those times with my, middle school, high school brain, I understood sort of that like that show was basically showing pilots for other shows. Right?
Specifically, you might recognize some of these, names. Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, Courage the Cowardly Dog, I Am Weasel.
The very first episode of What a Cartoon Show was the pilot for Powerpuff Girls and the pilot for Dexter's Lab, right? I think.
That is correct.
Correctly. Okay, I was correct. Look at that. Of course, cartoons are the things I can remember, right? Cartoons are apps, right? I can't remember anything else. And it's like, so you'd watch that and you saw these pilots for shows and, it's like you sort of, somehow those, then when they became real full on shows, it sort of felt like natural and connected, right? In some way like that. Yes, of course that like, that's now just a regular show that has more episodes, right? That makes perfect sense.
Well, plus as a kid, like in that era, I didn't really know like what a pilot was or like how the industry worked. Like, I didn't know how the industry worked, but I was also
I didn't know that many details, but I understood that you would make a single pilot episode, put it out there, see if people liked it, and then decide whether to make a full show or not based on how well it was received. Right? I understood that much.
But also, Cartoon slid in and filled this gap where, even forgetting the anime, as a kid, there was this distinct gap in quality between, I would see Looney Tunes from like the 50s and 60s, and then I would see what most animation looked like on American TV, and it felt like it was all crappy to my kid brain. And I didn't understand, like, a lot of the Looney Tunes were made for theatrical releases. Like, don't really quite internalize all that at the time. But even to my weeb anime-addled brain, when the cartoons came out, my brain said, wait a minute, these are pretty good.
Yeah. it's like, they weren't good in, animation wise on the level of a Looney Tunes, right? But compared to, the stuff that we had been seeing on like Saturday morning cartoons, right? Or after school, right? In terms of stuff that was made, in the United States in the present time, right? It was vastly superior, mostly in terms of writing, but the animation was also pretty good too. And this is pre-HD TV, right? It's like, and a lot of those shows, right? It's like, I watched Dexter's Lab recently, one episode, and because
I did too, because
streaming services, and you know what? They hold up and they're funny.
I referenced in a conversation a particular rhythmic laugh, and no one understood what the fuck I was on about. And I had to show a YouTube video to a bunch of my team leads, like a bunch of team leads I work with at work, who are all easily 10 to 15 years younger than me. And I watched the clip first to make sure, like, it was as funny as I remembered. It holds up. Also, that was the most high concept episode of Dexter's Lab ever.
Yeah, pretty much.
But
of the ones I remember,
I think the easiest thing to do would be to go down this list in chronological order and speak to these shows a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first one, I think Dexter's Lab, was the first one.
It was. I've got Wikipedia up in front of me. Dexter's Lab, April 28th, 1996. So I was a freshman in high school, and Dexter's Lab appeared on TV in 1996. Yeah. And Dexter's Lab, I remember being really funny, and having watched a few episodes recently, it is not as densely comedic as a modern cartoon aimed at kids. Like, the craft has advanced, but at the same, and it wasn't as funny as The Simpsons, which had already been airing for some time by the time Dexter's Lab came out. It is not even close to as funny as even an average episode of The Simpsons at that point. But I gotta say, Dexter's Lab was different from most other cartoons that I saw. And that is why I watched it despite having access to both The Simpsons and anime in the year 1996. I would chuckle at a Dexter's Lab.
The thing I remember the most about it was that before seeing an episode, when I merely knew the show existed, I remember having feelings that, like, it wasn't something I would be interested in, right? But then I remember watching it and it being nothing like what I thought it was going to be like.
I mean, it made references to Dungeons and Dragons. The only cartoon...
There was one episode that did
that.
But
it was only one episode compared to the rest of anything that I could see. Nothing talked about D&D except Record of Lodoss War, and even that was extremely indirect.
Right, but I think the thing with Dexter's Lab is that each episode is really just like one joke, right? It's like you could shrink, but what in a 30-minute, 20-minute block, they actually split it up into several episodes.
Yep.
It's not like a Simpsons where, Simpsons, you generally have
A plot, B plot.
Right. A plot, B plot that intertwine over the course of 20 to 30 minutes. Whereas in a Dexter's Lab, you get basically in your 20 to 30 minute time slot, you get several episodes, not all of which might even be Dexter's Lab. You might get a Justice Friends or Monkey, right? Which are probably better than Dexter's Lab sometimes, right?
But they were all like variations on a theme, like the Omelette du Fromage episode.
Right, exactly. Omelette du Fromage is like, an S-tier episode of Dexter's Lab, a legendary one for all time. But it's just one joke, right? All you can say is Omelette du Fromage, right? It's like, you get the joke, and it's like, it goes on, it's what? How long is just the Omelette du Fromage?
I don't even know. I don't remember.
5, 10 minutes tops, right? It's maybe 7 minutes. I don't know exactly how long it is, but it's like, it's a few minutes long, right? It's a little bit stretched out, but it's they mix it around a little bit, but it's one joke, right? Every episode of Dexter's Lab is basically one joke. Good joke, right? Some better than others, some more clever than others, right? And then you get a few of those combined together, and it's like a little mini anthology, and you're good to go. So it's good to watch, but it's like, I think some of the non-legendary episodes, right?
Well, they drag like all old media. They drag a little bit, like the title.
Yeah, it's like you could fast forward like a minute and be like and not miss anything.
Because the reason The Simpsons, because remember The Simpsons was around its prime during this era. The reason The Simpsons was so far and above beyond most other cartoons. One, it wasn't just aimed at younger kids, but two, that was edging into what we would consider modern writing and modern storyboarding and modern television in terms of density of content.
I think Dexter's Lab had the modern writing in terms of the type of jokes, the way it told the jokes, the way it animated the characters. Right?
It's really just the density,
the voice acting being good.
It's the density of content. Most old shows everywhere feel sparse by modern standards.
Mm-hmm. Anyway,
Johnny Bravo.
Dexter's Lab holds up. Would watch, right?
Yep.
If it was on, right?
Johnny Bravo. I feel like you could watch a very short compilation of key moments, and I don't remember much beyond. It was just one joke.
Yeah, all of Johnny Bravo. If each episode of Dexter's Lab is a different joke, every episode of Johnny Bravo is one joke, right?
Yep.
That doesn't mean it's going to be bad. That's not necessarily negative, right? It's like, Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote is one joke. And it's several episodes of one joke, right? And that works. But for Johnny Bravo, it's not a great joke.
Yep.
Right? It's like, oh, there's a chauvinist dude who is not too bright, and he gets into shenanigans and gets what he deserves. The end. Right?
There is one legendary episode where he becomes a woman and has to deal with the bullshit of men that was appropriately subversive for its audience. But yeah, I struggle to remember anything other like Johnny Bravo. My brain just has this almost Dali conglomeration of all Johnny Bravo episodes into two episodes. The Johnny Bravo, and then the one where he's a girl.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember really specific episodes too much either. But
I only watched it when it was on. Usually between other things I was trying to watch.
I think the strongest parts of the show were actually the character design, right, of Johnny Bravo himself. It's it's a really good character design.
It is a really good character design.
This triangle dude with this hair, right? It's like he's basically two triangles. And I've actually, it's like, for as whatever as the show is, I think the character is somewhat remembered by people of a certain age. Just this week, I saw one of those triangle stands, little chalkboards outside a restaurant that had a Johnny Bravo joke on it, and I was like, whoa, what's up with that? It's like, who's working in this restaurant? My age. It's, so I don't know.
I should have taken a picture of it though, because actually, the other day in Midtown, I was walking in a different part of where I usually walk, and I saw a coffee shop, and they had a picture of Kenshiro, and it was like, "You are already caffeinated." That was just on the chalkboard outside.
There you go. So Johnny Bravo, it was like, it was one of those shows where when it was on, I would watch it if it was on, but that's because of the nature of television in those days. I would never have been like, ooh, I have to go watch it or watch it on purpose or anything like that. Right?
Cow and Chicken, I'll admit, I saw one episode of it, and my kid brain said, this is just a ripoff Ren and Stimpy, and I never looked back.
So it was Ren and Stimpy-ish, right? It was a bit out there and stylistically, aesthetically, a little bit, Duckman-ish maybe even at times, just in the weirdness of what was going on.
Oh, wow. We should do a fucking show on Duckman. Memories just
I haven't watched, nor do I remember enough Duckman to do it.
My family was into Duckman. We would sit down as a family, parents and grandparents and kids together, and we have all seen all of Duckman.
It was hard for me to watch all of it because it wasn't on at a consistent time. I couldn't get,
Well, my family, we did the thing where we would all tape shows, removing the commercials, and pass those VHS tapes around.
Anyway, so Cow and Chicken was this weird show that also included, sort of anthology, other episodes of things in there, right? They think the I Am Weasel that eventually became its own show was originally a segment on the cow and chicken.
That makes sense because I Am Weasel, I bucketed in my brain together with Cow and Chicken. I actually didn't realize they were different shows until just now.
Monkey and Justice, whatever, were also part of Dexter's lab, right? Same, and whatnot. So, but yeah, the Cow and Chicken was just sort of like this. It definitely didn't feel like it felt sort of like, is this actually for children kind of deal? Right? Like,
I mean, see also Ren and Stimpy.
Well, I think, aesthetically, art style, a bit Ren and Stimpy-ish with the loose lines and the sort of, a little bit of gross out kind of action. Yeah. There, right? But content-wise, I felt it more was in line with Rocko's Modern Life. And I don't know for sure, but like there was the red guy who was sort of like the villain guy. Who had a similar...
Oh, I remember that red guy, the devil-looking guy.
Yeah, he had a similar shape, and I think, pretty sure, the same voice actor as the next-door neighbor fishy guy in Rocko's Modern Life, and a similar character kind of thing, right? So there are a lot of parallels there. But yeah, again, it wasn't a show that I would go out of my way to watch on purpose, or that like I was a fan of, or that anyone would be a fan of that I could think of. But it wasn't awful. It had merit, and like if it was on, I wouldn't turn it off unless something better was going on. Yeah. But in an era of pull television instead of push television, right? I do have one anecdote though related to this, and that I was in summer camp. And we went to an amusement park as a field trip. And at the amusement park, there was a little carny game. I forget which carny game it was. It might have been Shoot the Water in the Clown Mouth or something like that. And I won. And I got a probably bootleg plush chicken, specifically the chicken from Cow and Chicken.
Ooh.
I think I may have it somewhere still. I don't know. But there you go.
Let's see.
Been a bootleg one because I think it also fell apart. I don't know.
I gotta check because we could talk about Powerpuff Girls, but I would be shocked if we have not done an entire show on the Powerpuff Girls.
Oh, we could have done a show on the movie that we saw at the Dollar Theater.
We have never done a show on the Powerpuff Girls, the show or the movie.
You just deleted it, didn't you? Yeah, Powerpuff Girls was interesting because it was like there was the ones we've talked about so far. Though I guess that those were all sort of in existence when I got Cartoon Network and started watching the shows. Yep. It's like all four of those: Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken. Those are all there. Those felt like at the time they felt like those were the cartoons. And when Powerpuff Girls came out, like I guess there was already that pilot that people had seen, but like when
Powerpuff Girls came out, I was like, "What is this show?" And I was on board. Right.
When it became its own show, it was like a big deal. It was like a new one. It was like, whoa! It's like there's another one that's coming into existence, and it's an exciting one. It's new and different and cool, and I'm on board with it. And there was like this, there was hype at that time, right? Like new show, actually good. Wow, let's watch this, right? Like I was watching those. Like there'd be new episodes once a week, and I was getting there once.
I was still watching Powerpuff Girls
to watch it.
And when we were in college at RIT, I was still watching like new episodes of Powerpuff Girls as they came out. And that's to the point where I wasn't just a mega weeb. I was running the fucking RIT anime club. And I was still watching Powerpuff Girls.
This was, right, so more than the other shows, right, going out of my way to watch this, right, going to the dollar movie theater on Wednesday night to watch the movie for 50 cents. Right?
That is still one of the best values I've ever gotten outside of piracy in terms of money spent per unit entertainment.
Yeah, it's like Powerpuff Girls was some fucking show, right? It's like the episodes actually, they were mostly Monster of the Week type situations, right? Usually it was Mojo Jojo, even though you wanted there to be a lot more episodes about him.
Him is a standout and bold character design that I appreciate. And while there are problematic elements, it could have been a lot worse. They handled that character shockingly well for a late 90s to early 2000s pop culture show aimed at kids.
Yeah. But yeah, it was really, it was quite a show because you had, first of all, you got the three characters, right? All significantly different, right? They all got their own. You could have a Bubbles episode,
Yep.
right? You could have a Blossom, right? You could have a
the Professor episode, and it would totally work, and it did work, and they did it a bunch of times.
Yep. And then you get different combinations with different villains going on, right? It's like, even though I felt like there weren't, at least in the early seasons that I saw, right, in the late 90s, there weren't enough different villains. It felt like they kept reusing like Amoeba Boys over and over again. Or Mojo Jojo over and over again. It was still, right, enough different combinations and enough plot lines that were all interesting, right? And even though there wasn't some serial overarching long-term plot, right? It was always just, episode of the week, monster of the week, whatever. It did it really well, right? It was always entertaining, a mix of, mostly humor, but also, some serious elements, right, going on there. And they mixed in a lot. It was like, you would think, like, you watch, the Rocko's Modern Life and the Cow and Chicken and the Ren and Stimpy, and those were the shows putting in the jokes that are actually for adults, but that go over the children's heads.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's like, you think Powerpuff Girls isn't one of those shows, but Powerpuff Girls was one of those shows times like a million. It was just so crafty at it. I remember, also maybe not the most tasteful joke, but I specifically remember an episode where Mojo Jojo gets locked in the prison in a cell with a large individual, and it is heavily implied that Mojo Jojo is going to drop the soap. And while that's not an appropriate joke in general, to put that in a children's show in the 90s, because a kid watching it just thinks, oh, Mojo Jojo went to jail, right? But an adult is going to think something very different. So and the fact that the show, I think more than any of the other shows, it had staying power in that it was redone. Wasn't there an anime version? And
there've been multiple attempts to bring Powerpuff Girls back in a variety of places, different aged audiences, anime,
in terms
comics,
of merchandising, and right. It's like a lot of these shows, I think, had some GBA video games and whatnot, but I feel like Powerpuff Girls had the most. Right? It's like, that was the big one that sort of dwarfed all the others.
So we've gone on for a while, so we'd probably wrap up pretty soon.
Well, we're getting to the time when I stopped watching television.
Exactly. So briefly, what I'd say is I never watched Ed, Edd and Eddy, but
Ed, Edd and Eddy is like, has a lot of cachet on the internet.
Oh, it does. And I would say it speaks very powerfully to people who are a little bit younger than me and Scott. Because I've noticed our friends who were like 3 or 4 years younger than us, Ed, Edd and Eddy was like their fucking show.
I watched a handful of episodes, it's like, but, it wasn't super my thing, but I saw its merits, right?
Yep. If I had been a little younger,
yep.
I could see, because it really captured, from what of it I've seen, like what it's like to be a suburban kid when your family's not really that wealthy, like middle class to lower middle class, kids living real lives. I'd say that a show like Bob's Burgers is an evolved form of some of the kinds of humor and the way the show would approach this type of environment. It's I don't know. I think it's a very stand-up show that I just didn't watch a lot of. And holy shit, it went until 2009?
Yep.
There was a decade of Ed, Edd and Eddy? All right.
I mean, a lot of those shows, they went for a long time, but didn't necessarily have that many episodes produced each year.
Yep.
So, but yeah, it's like this weird show in that, like, it was actually kind of huge, but was kind of a sleeper in that it didn't get, it lasted that long, had that many episodes, was popular enough, but it didn't have all the big extra stuff that like Powerpuff Girls had.
Yeah.
So there might be a video game out there somewhere, but not many, I imagine. I don't know.
And Courage the Cowardly Dog was actually a pretty okay show. Obviously, I was barely watching TV by then, but one thing I remember distinctly was that, one, it was very easy to read that the show is from the dog's perspective and it's all actually just normal stuff happening and the dog just doesn't understand. But two, the backgrounds and the setting were so terrifying and isolating and surreal that stood out despite how little of that show I actually watched.
Yeah, I mean, it was aesthetically and artistically, it was sort of like a masterpiece of a show. But, at the age I was, at the time I was, right, I didn't appreciate that very much. And I didn't, I didn't hate it, but I wasn't that entertained by it. So, like, I wasn't, going out of my way to watch it at the time it came out. But, now I can, knowing about it, I can appreciate, what went into it. And I was like, I'm glad that something like that was made. But I also understand why it didn't become mega popular. But actually, it did, considering what it was, like, hey, that's pretty good, right? I don't think a thing like that can happen really nowadays, which is kind of sad.
Yeah. And yep, I mean, Cartoon was a pretty important part of like the evolution of American cartoons. And it's kind of sad that Cartoon Network in the era after Cartoon did start backing away from animation, which we've talked about at length in the past.
The ones that came after that, I didn't see very much of because I didn't watch a lot of television after that time. I went to college and stopped watching TV. But I have heard good things about some of those shows, right? And it's actually, it's kind of sad that they don't make, they don't have this going on anymore, right? It's like, I guess everything went over, they're still making original animations, right? You got your Adventure Times happened, right?
I mean, we're like we've said, we are now today.
Steven Universe happened.
We're in a platinum age of good and diverse animation for a variety of audiences. It is our cup overfloweth.
Right. They're still making new, animated shows at the time, right? It's like they never stopped with that. But I think that having, I guess that sort of goes with just the death of people watching television on a schedule, is like having some sort of cartoon block where we're always going to have 5 shows, right, going on at all times in this spot with new episodes and new seasons starting together, right? Like on a schedule to sort of keep the factory going.
Yep.
I guess those days are long gone.
I mean, the media watching environment is very different, which that's a topic for another show.
Yep.